Welcome. Welcome to today's session, which is the course in swimming pool and spa barrier inspection, and it's an information session for RTOs seeking to become endorsed to deliver this course. So welcome, my name is Jennifer Mason and I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for Education and Training. I'm going to be your host for today, and with me are two of my colleagues. I'll introduce to you Susan Gaylor, who's a Manager of Knowledge and Experience. Susan looks after the team that looks after the assessments component and examination component. The Knowledge and Experience team is part of the Licensing and Registration Division. And also with us is John Prendergast. John is the building surveyor for special projects at the VBA, but John also has many, many years of experience in building surveying, and he was also an MBS or municipal building surveyor and has extensive experience in inspection of pool barrier safety compliance. So before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording this, and we will provide the recording and the slide pack. And I'm just going to confirm that I actually did turn on the recording of this. Yes, I have. And you're also all on mute. That's just to preserve sound quality, but if you have a question, please feel free to put up your virtual hand in Zoom. If you're not familiar with Zoom, if you wave your mouse on your screen, you'll get a little bar up and there'll be a hand symbol. That's how you put up your hand. We will be pausing for question and answers throughout the session. And lastly, we'll also be conducting some polls. So this will be somewhat interactive. We'll put a little bit of interaction here so you're not just listening to my voice the whole time. Looking at our agenda today, we're going to do a quick background into the new laws that came into effect late last year. Looking at the new class of registration, building inspector, pool safety, which is what this course is about. A quick overview of the course, an overview of what your RTO obligations are should you become endorsed to deliver this course, and of course the million-dollar question, how to become endorsed. So I'd like to start off by sharing a story. This is a real story around why some of these new laws came into place. In 2013, in a fairly well-documented case in the media, a young child was found floating face down in a pool, in a backyard pool in Melton. That child had entered the pool in the middle of the night. The coroner who looked into that particular the coroner who looked into that particular case found that that child's death was preventable. And that was because although the pool had a safety barrier, the barrier was old and it no longer functioned correctly and the gate no longer shut correctly. So when the owners went to shut the gate, it would sometimes bounce open. And unfortunately, it was open the night that that toddler entered the pool. The coroner who presided over that inquest had presided over similar inquests, and with newfound powers afforded to the coroner's court, made the recommendation that we needed to amend some regulations within Victoria, and specifically that we should introduce registration for all pools and spas in Victoria, and also that we should introduce mandatory safety inspections of barriers to ensure that those barriers maintain compliance. Now, I'm now going to turn off my video so you don't have to look at me. But I am going to now put up a poll, and I'm going to ask you to answer this question. And that is, what percentage of Victorians households have a pool or spa? Okay, I'm just going to give you a few more seconds to answer there. Just give you another 10 seconds. You can take a guess. Okay, let's see, I've got one more person to vote. And I'm going to end the poll there and let's see the results. Okay, so 2% of you, so some people thought it was 2%, some thought it was 5%, and some thought it was 20%. The actual answer is that we don't know. We don't know the exact number, but it's thought that it's approximately 10%. And I'll explain why we think it's 10%. The VBA and DELP, that's the Department of Water Education, Land and Planning, who is the department for the VBA, did quite a bit of research into how many pools. Because we currently don't have registration, we don't know exactly how many pools there are. And older pools weren't subject to permits depending on their date of construction. So how we came to this figure is that we did a lot of research into the number of permits that have been issued over the years, speaking to local councils and municipalities. There was some drone research, so there were some drones that went out across certain suburbs in Melbourne and physically counted the number of pools and spas in some of those older suburbs, and also talking to key industry associations such as Spas Australia and Spas Victoria, and looking at industry bodies that install pools. So we came up with 10%. This is not an accurate figure, but it's actually higher than was expected in Victoria. So I have another poll for you. Let me set this one up. And this one is, what is on average, how many Victorian children aged 0 to 4 drown each year? And again, to your best guess. And I'll give you about 30 seconds to have a go at that one. So on average, how many Victorian children aged 0 to 4 drown each year? And I'll just give it another 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the polling there and I'm going to share the results. So 67% of you thought it was 3 and 33% of you thought it was 4. Let's have a look at the answer. And the answer is actually 4, which is quite a lot. And that's since 2000, since the year 2000. So it's quite a lot. Some of those drownings include non-fatal drownings as well, but these figures don't include older children and they don't include adults. They don't include teenagers. They also don't include adults with special needs. So it's quite a high number. Let's have a look at some more statistics. So children in this age group make up 6% of the population, but they make up 13% of the drowning fatalities. Now, if you're looking at that and thinking that doesn't compute, you're right, they're overrepresented in drowning fatalities. Now, you can see, obviously, if they're 30% of the drowning fatalities, that they are not the highest statistic of drowning fatalities. That's actually young men from age 18 to 24. So young adult men, and it's thought that that's largely to do with alcohol, drugs, misbehaviour, and I'm just going to put, for a better term, general stupidity, mucking around in a pool, diving in at the shallow end, etc. But certainly children at this age are overrepresented, and this is why these new laws have been introduced. So some more statistics. There have been 27 deaths since 2000 in home pools or spas. That's from up until 2017. I don't have more recent data at the moment. Of those 27, 9 had no barrier. 9. Nearly 1 in 3 of those deaths were as a result of no barrier. Now, I'm just going to make it clear that the definition of a barrier by the Coroner's Court's requirements and under the Act is 4 sides to a pool. So fully enclosed, minimum 4 sides. So if there is no gate, there is no barrier. If there are 3 sides and a person can walk into the pool area without going through a barrier, there is no barrier. So 9. And 11 as a result of non-compliant barriers. So one of those 11 is our toddler from 2013, where the pool gate didn't self-close every single time. Conversely, there's another one in the coroner's inquests where one didn't close all the time. So one closed all the time. It was really difficult to get open. So Dad actually rigged up a wire to make sure the latch opened every single time. That wire hung over the side of the pool. Toddler watched Dad open the pool. Toddler used that wire to open up the pool. Other cases involve people propping open the pool gate because it locked and it was difficult to get open. There was another one where the earth had shifted across time underneath the fence itself. If you pushed hard enough on a fence, and I've got a big dog, my dog would be able to push against that fence and make that fence move. The gate would push open, and we had a child between age 0 and 4 into that pool. So non-compliant barriers are really critical, and also the fact that there's no barriers. So of those 27 drownings, 20 were preventable. And that's just a statistic that we need to change around. And basically came down to there either being no or non-compliant barrier. Some further statistics. There were 34 emergency presentations. This is data from 2005 to 2015. So across a 10-year period, 34 children between the age of 0 and 4 entered into the emergency department. A further 20 were admitted into a hospital. Our challenge with the hospital admissions is that we don't know how long they stayed in hospital. We don't know if they were stayed overnight for a couple of days, or whether they stayed there for months. We also don't know whether they incurred any injuries, such as acquired brain syndrome injury. So quite significant statistics. And when you add those sets of statistics up with the drownings and the non-fatal drownings, it's of concern. What we do know is 100% of those known drownings, and I emphasize the word known drownings, is that they all involve supervision issues. So supervision is our number one tool to prevent these drownings. However, anybody who is a parent or a grandparent or is just around younger children knows that you cannot supervise children 100% of the time with 100% accuracy. The phone rings. You look away for a second. You're asleep and your child was in bed and the back door was open and the pool barrier didn't have a compliant fence. So supervision is really important, but the importance of the barrier is that it's our backup. It's our number one backup mechanism to supervision. We also don't know about the near misses. I emphasised just a moment ago about the known drownings. We don't know how many times there are near misses. So we don't know how many times an ambulance is called out and the child doesn't have to go to emergency. We don't know how many times a parent rescues their child without needing to call an ambulance or needing to go to hospital. So the figures of non-fatal drownings could be much higher. So let's quickly look at the changes to the pool laws. So the coroner's recommendations were implemented effective 1st of December 2019 when they were launched. As part of those laws from 1st of November 2020, all pools and spas must be registered with local council. Now you may have read that that was actually meant to be 1st of June this year. That date got pushed back due to COVID. Another change is that from now on, every 4 years, all pools and spas, with some limited exceptions, must have the safety barrier inspected every 4 years. And prior to these laws coming about, we did have pool safety inspections. Those were done as part of the building building occupation permit with a new pool. And those inspections were done by a building inspector or a building surveyor. Now it was recognised that we need to have more people being able to do these pool safety inspections with the numbers coming through that we expect. So that's why we created, or that's why a new class was created, the building inspector for building safety. Now I'm saying building safety then, that should be pool safety, sorry, that's me changing that slide. Okay, and what will happen is pool owners must get a compliance certificate every 4 years and they must provide that to their local council. And the first of those compliance certificates will be submitted in the 1st of November 2021, so next year. So that means they must have had their pool inspected. If there are any issues, they must have been rectified, the pool must have been re-inspected, and they have to have been issued a certificate. Now, because we have a large volume of older pools in Victoria, this is being introduced during a stepped process, and these are the key dates. So if the pool was constructed on or before the 30th of June 1994, they are the first cab off the rank. They must have their compliance certificate submitted by 1 November 2021. If the pool was constructed between the 1st of June 1994 and 30th of April 2010, it's the 1st of November 2022, May 2010 to October 2020, 1st November 2023. And 1 November 2020 onwards, 30 days after their permit received, they must have an inspection. Okay, I'm just going to pause there. If you have any questions, just put up your virtual hand. You can use the Q&A box and I'll read those out, or you can put up your hand and I will answer those questions for you. Okay, we don't have any questions coming through yet, so I'll keep moving forward. Okay, let's have a look at the building inspector pool safety. So what they can and can't do. They can do pool barrier safety compliance inspections. They can issue certificates of pool and spa barrier compliance or non-compliance, and they can lodge non-compliance certificates with the relevant council. They cannot inspect newly constructed pool barriers. That's called a mandatory inspection and requires a permit. So they can't do anything that requires a permit. They do not look at slip, trip and fire hazards related to the pool. They do not look at chemical storage and water balance. They do not look at pool mechanical components, and they do not look at structures that are not part of the pool barrier. So a lot of people then ask why they call building inspector pool safety. Shouldn't they have been called building inspector pool barrier safety? The answer to that is good question. And there's certainly some feedback that went back that perhaps the name it could have been better and should have included the word barrier, but it doesn't at the moment. Andrew, I can see you've asked a question. I will come to your question in a moment. So just for clarity, who can act as a pool inspector for barrier safety compliance inspections? So it's this new class: building inspector, pool safety, building inspector and building surveyor. The mandatory building inspections that lead to the issuing of an occupancy permit has to be done by a building inspector or building surveyor. This group of people, the building inspector, pool safety, they don't have that same level of knowledge. Okay, I'm just going to answer Andrew's question. So Andrew how have the public been communicated with regarding the changes and the requirements for checks to be completed? Great question, Andrew. So with that one, there was quite a bit of media coverage when this was released last year. There's been some more media go out. Local councils have been promoting this. John, I might just ask you to jump in and see if you've got any other questions to add to that.
Sorry, any other questions or any
any other questions, any other information to add to that?
No, look, it did get a lot of hearing on 3AW through I think it was 3AW, one of those ones, for a good time last year. So there was a lot of information getting around about it, and social media, a lot of social media posts. Councils on their websites have put up information, but it's always difficult to get it out. We're still trying.
Yeah, and there is some communications that went out just recently from the VBA and also from DELP, but largely it's been the councils who put out communications. But Andrew, to answer your question, some councils have been really proactive. Some councils have put up information. I think all councils now have put up information, if I'm correct, John, but some councils have been particularly proactive.
Yeah, some councils have actually gone and found on any of the records they've got, or through aerial photography, found the swimming pools, written to all the owners and told them the information. And when I get John Prendergast spelt right, I might talk again.
That would be me, John. Okay, thank you, John, appreciate that. Okay, moving into the next slide. So to become qualified in this class, they need to have two things. So they need the course in swimming pool and spa barrier inspection and at least 6 months of practical experience of doing inspections. And that 6 months of practical experience takes into account the course that they do. So if they do this course, that includes doing the course, and it also includes doing some practical inspections on their own, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We also are aware that some people who are wanting to become registered into this class will have some prior experience. They may not have full experience, they may have some experience just in inspecting current pools through helping out a surveyor, but we'll talk a little bit about that further on. So in terms of the registration application, so they will fill out an application form, which is on the VBA website. They'll need to provide evidence of their education. And again, this course will be the primary prescribed course. They'll need to provide a portfolio of evidence. We'll talk about the portfolio of evidence in a moment. And they'll also need to provide a technical referee report. That may be from one technical referee or more technical referees. And then in terms of the portfolio of evidence, they need to complete 25 inspections, and they'll need to submit a log of those 25 inspections. So we're saying a minimum of 25 inspections. The more that they have, the better. And they need to provide at least 5 detailed inspections done on live sites. Are there any questions about the registration component? Okay, got no questions coming up, so I'll keep going. So let's look at the course itself. So the objectives, delivery, and the assessment. So the aim of the course is for a person to be able to develop the required skills and knowledge and develop some of the portfolio of evidence for registration to become a building inspector for pool safety. So a couple of things about this course. It's not an accredited course. We did look to see if there was a course that met our needs through the accredited process. There isn't. There is an accredited course specifically for Queensland, but it is specific to Queensland regulations. It does not cover all the requirements to Victoria. They are a little bit different. So Queensland found the same thing that we did, that there wasn't an accredited course or a unit that was suitable and had a course accredited. We looked into that process, and that's our intention. It takes 12 to 18 months to have a course become accredited. So that's our intention. However, we think this is really important. We don't want to wait in terms of making sure people are educated. Hence, we are endorsing this process. Only RTOs endorsed by the VBA will be accepted via the VBA as evidence for education. The course must be run to VBA course specifications, and I've provided a copy of that to all of you. You'll note that the course specification mimics unit requirements. We've tried to align it as much as possible to what you're familiar with in the accredited space. For obvious reasons, it makes it easier for you to interpret, but also because our intention is for this to become accredited later on. The course must be assessed, and endorsed RTOs must issue a verifiable certificate of completion, and endorsed RTOs will be subject to VBA desktop reviews and monitoring. So we don't intend to audit this in the same way that ASQA or VRQA would be, but will have a quality assurance process on that. Through our industry consultation, we found that there were 4 broad student cohorts that would likely to be interested in doing this work. So first were building surveyors and inspectors. Typically, this would be people who have retired or were former surveyors and inspectors and ceased to be so for whatever reason, or students who are currently doing work, who are currently studying in this space, and it will give them some opportunity to get some practical experience towards their career pathway. The second one is builders, specifically domestic unlimited builders, and builders who have a registration limited to pool construction or a registration limited to fence construction. They have a natural affinity to this, and they would also already have some knowledge in this space. And then in addition, there would be relevant trades such as carpenters, glaziers, fencers, and pool technicians that would also have some experience in this space. And also I'd add in there people like there's welders who also do work on pool fences. And then there would be non-industry persons. And given the pandemic and the lockdowns, there may be more of these people that are interested in doing this work than we possibly anticipated. Some key documents, you've been sent these, the course and swimming pool and spa barrier inspection course specifications. I'm not going to go into those in any detail, but I will go over some highlights. And there's also a course companion implementation guide, which gives you some additional information and also some likely cohorts as well. The key learning areas of this pool are legislation, codes, and standards. We really want them to know these inside out, and specifically the ones that relate to pools and spas. They need to have technical skills. They need to have skills in documentation and doing reports. They need to understand the duties, ethics, and obligations of being a pool inspector. They need to have good communication skills. And they need to have scheduling and organization skills. One of the things that we really find is important in this space is communication skills, and specifically explaining to the general public why they have to get these inspections done. One of the most common things that a building surveyor gets, why do I have to have a pool barrier? I don't have children. Why do I have to have a pool barrier? I don't have children, and I don't know anybody else here has children. We're never going to have children in the pool. So they have to be able to explain the reasons for the legislation, and also they also have to have some dispute resolution skills as well. And they also are going to have to deal with the general public, and they are also going to have to deal with general public, and they're also going to have to deal with the general public who may not have English as the first language, who may have some cultural specific nuances around this. So Marcus just asked a question. Can you clarify technical skills? We have retired lawyers who are familiar with legislation and documentation and reporting. Yeah, the technical skills is actually understanding how to conduct the inspection itself. So how to use the tools that are involved in carrying out the inspection. So haven't thought of lawyers. So lawyers may be really familiar with the legislation, codes and standards, but not necessarily in how to carry out an actual inspection. So the technical skills reflect the inspections. John, can I just get you to unmute yourself, and you can probably add a little bit more to that comment?
I'm not too sure how much more I could add to it. Hang on.
Did I answer it okay?
Yes, that was very well answered.
Thanks. Okay. They also need to take it. You also in the training, the course need to take into account OHS considerations. So they're not required to obtain a white card. And that's because they are not generally entering into a construction site. Those who are building surveyors and building inspectors must hold a white card because they're inspecting pools that are on a construction site. In this case, these are pools that already exist on domestic houses. So the house is already built and the pool is generally already built. They are not able to conduct mandatory inspections for a new pool. So if it's an existing house, and it's a brand new pool, they're not able to do that work because it requires a permit. So this is the 4-year safety inspection. So they don't need a white card, but there are OHS considerations that need to be embedded into the course. And the learning approach. This is a really important one with this. So it's the what, the how, and the why. We do not want you just to look at the what and the how. It's really important that these persons understand the why, because they have to explain it to the general public. So I'm going to run another poll now, and to just give you a demonstration of what we mean by that. Okay, here's our poll. Why are children at age 0 to 4 at higher risk of drowning? Select all that you think applies. This is multiple choice, so you can select 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So remember, you can select as many as you like. This isn't just one answer. It might be two, it might be all five, it might be three. And it's interesting watching this live because I can see some people are changing their mind, which is interesting as well. Okay, I'm going to give that another 10 seconds and then I will show you the results. Okay, I'm going to finish that now. And I'll share the results. So we have 43% that thought the center of gravity makes them top heavy. That is absolutely correct. So a child leaning over a pool, age 0 to 4, their heads are heavier. So as we get older, as we grow, our center of gravity reduces down. So a child, if you ever watch a young child learning to walk, they fall over all the time because they've got to work out their balance. So the center of gravity makes them more likely to fall into the pool if they're on the side of the pool. Their motor skills development stage, 71% of you said that was a risk factor. Absolutely. An older child can look at water and go, that's not a solid bouncy thing. That's water. I'm going to fall into that. A young child between the ages 0 and 4 does not have the cognitive ability yet to do that. So the younger they are, the less likely they are to do that. That was a cognitive development. That was a cognitive development stage was 100%, which was correct. The motor skills development stage was 71%. So nearly all of you said that again. That's also correct. So although some children can swim at ages 3 and 4, it's very limited ability. They have weaker muscles. They're still developing those muscles, and certainly a young baby really struggles with that. So certainly motor skills is an issue there. Their average height, 57% of you said their average height. Yeah, so if you think about it, for children in this age group, there often isn't a shallow end because it's deeper than they are. And they are attracted to shiny things. 43% of you said that. They are also attracted to shiny things. In fact, human beings as general are attracted to shiny things, but we know that toddlers in particular are attracted to shiny things, and young children are attracted to shiny things. It's why you often see kids really attracted to things like Christmas trees and they head across to the tinsel. So let me put that all for you. If I'm a 10-year-old child, first of all, my center of gravity. So I'm attracted to the pool because it's shiny and nice. But I know because of my cognitive development stage that water is not solid. So I'm not going to try and crawl onto it. I'm not going to fall into it, but I might want to reach over and touch it. If I do, I'm less likely to fall into the pool and I'm more likely to be able to swim. Hopefully I've had some swimming lessons. And if I do fall into the pool, I'm likely to be able to keep myself upright. I'll have the skills to be able to do that, and my brain will most likely kick in and say, got to get to the shallow end of the pool. And there will be a shallow end pool for most 10-year-olds. For a child that's young, they get attracted to the pool because the pool water is shiny. In the toddler that passed away in Melton, they think that child was the moon was out that night, and they think that the child was attracted to the moon, the moonlight on the water. So they were attracted to the shiny thing. So attracted to the shiny things, they go to reach for the shiny thing. They don't recognize that there's danger. They fall in because the center of gravity makes them top heavy. So if they're reaching out, more likely to fall in. They don't have the motor skills to be able to hold themselves upright the younger that they are. And because of their height, they are less likely to have a shallow end. So this is this is a very, very quick way of doing that. I'm going to stop sharing that post, but this is the kind of learning that we want you to take into account. Other examples are, why is there a minimum gap from the ground to the bottom of the barrier fence? And that's because it has to be lower than a baby's head. So we want you to really take into account the what, how, and why. David, I can see you've asked a question and I think I'll be answering that in a little bit longer, so I'll come to your question in a moment. Okay, resources. We don't expect Endorsed RTOs to have to write a lot of resources because there are primary resources. So there are the building regulations themselves, Building Regulations 2018, There are the relevant standards. We have the standards listed on the VBA website. We have the National Construction Code, and we also have the Council and Practitioner Guide that's been put out by VBA in conjunction with DELT. We also have key stakeholder websites. So there's a lot of information on the VBA website. There's Lifesaver Victoria, there's KidSafe, there's SPASA Victoria, there's also SPASA Australia that have resources in this space. SPASA Victoria obviously has some key things. So we don't see then a need to be writing a lot of resources. Obviously, depending on how you deliver it, you would expect that you're going to be writing session plans, PowerPoints, if you're doing it online, that you're putting information online, but we don't see that you need to write a lot of resources. So we would prefer that you use as much as possible primary resources. In terms of delivery, we see that there's a range of delivery modes that you can choose. So this will include face-to-face, live webinars, online content, such as videos, readings. So it might be the case that they do some work outside of class, interactive content, simulations and role plays, case studies, and others. So we want you to take we want you to think about this as you would normal good quality training. Assessment. In terms of the assessment, the course has a series of performance evidence and knowledge evidence. This is really just a summary of what's included in there. So they must do 15 barrier inspections. They must do a minimum of 3 per standard. These can be live or closely simulated, and they must do a detailed portfolio for 5 of the inspections. When we say closely simulated, it must be as close to a real pool as you can, and there's different methodologies for doing that. In terms of knowledge evidence, it will be the technical knowledge, the regulatory framework, consumer information, and soft skills. You can also look at recognition of existing skills. So you may offer a lower volume of learning to experienced cohorts. So for example, if you are delivering the advanced diploma of building surveying, there is a unit in there that you can talk about pools, but a lot of RTOs don't. But you can, if you've got a cohort doing that group, you might offer this course as an adjunct. So you may not have to do as much learning around that because they're already doing some learning. If you are targeting people who are builders, they will have some experience reading standards. So reading standards in National Construction Code, you can offer RPL, and you can also offer obviously gap training. So we also recognize that there will be some cohorts that will have no skills in this space whatsoever, and others that have a lot of experience in some parts of this, but not all. And there are no credit transfer arrangements for this because this is not an accredited course. Okay, I'm going to stop for questions. So if you have any questions, pop them out. And David, I'm just going to address your two. So how will you establish consistency with training materials if various RTOs are developing the training assessment materials without a steering committee? We actually are going to ask any RTO that wants to become an endorsed RTO that they must submit their assessment tool for at least one cohort. And that's the full assessment tool. And the panel that endorses or reviews that process will make a recommendation whether to endorse or not on the quality of that assessment tool. I'll talk about that a little bit more further on. And you said that you have trainers and OHS workplace inspectors that audit against criteria. If our auditor inspector does not have building certification of a specific course, will this exclude us from being accredited? I'm going to answer that question a little bit further on when we look at teaching. Are there any other questions that are there in the meantime? No. Okay. So in terms of the portfolio of registration, I said before that they have to submit when they apply 25 inspections. They can use the 15 inspections from the course, but they must do an additional 10 that are done on live sites. And the 5 detailed inspections that they have to provide as part of that portfolio is included in the 25. So of those 25, 5 must be more detailed and they must be done on live sites. So if your RTO is only doing simulated assessments for the practical aspect, and that might be the case. And the reason why we've allowed that is obviously due to challenges with COVID and the number of people that can go out and assess. But the message is that they must do at least 10 on live sites, and they must do 5 that are very detailed. So and when I say detailed, that means that they have photographs, they have copies of the documentation, the checklist used. Okay, let's have a look at your obligations should you choose to become an endorsed RTO. So, training and assessment staff. They must have a current TAE qualification or equivalent. They must have current, pass, or be eligible to hold registration as a building surveyor, building inspector, or building inspector pool safety. So David, if providing that your trainers meet the requirements that they would be equivalent to a building inspector pool safety, that's fine. We know some RTOs have people who are building inspectors and building surveyors, so they'll meet those requirements, and others will have staff who would be eligible to apply. And they must have demonstrated experience in inspecting pool barriers. So if you have staff who have done inspections in New South Wales or Queensland, they are likely to be eligible as well. They may not meet full eligibility, but we will certainly take that into account on a one-by-one circumstance. In terms of currency, we want to know that in the last 2 years, more of these activities that they've carried out pool barrier inspections, that they've completed the course, they've completed building surveyor or building inspector course that the VBA approves, that they've carried out CPD activities in this space, so continuous professional development activities, or they have an active membership in a relevant industry body. We will count any of those 2 things as being relevant for the last 2 years. And we chose the last 2 years because it lines up with the CPC training package. You must do a pre-enrolment review. So you must look at what is the prospective student's study intention, their digital literacy, their L&N skills. Do they have any reasonable adjustment requirements? Do they have relevant education and experience? So this is just like what you would do here in Victoria as a stand-in. In terms of L&N skills, the literacy indicators that we looked at, so for learning, we see that as a 3, for reading, it's a 4, for writing, it's a 3, for oral communication, it's a 3, and a numeracy is a 3. So that probably doesn't surprise any of you, but just for a clarification, the reason why it's level 4 for reading is when you look at the ASCSF guidelines, reading takes into account a level 4 for reading standards and regulations. So that's why reading is at level 4. Of course, like standard vet, you can have someone who is lower, providing that you can provide them with relevant support and ongoing support. And in terms of reasonable adjustment requirements, that can be a range of things. That we don't see that someone who has dyslexia is necessarily excluded. That might be people with anxiety and they may need extra assistance in terms of dealing with the public, or it could be just someone with arthritis and that has to use a mobility aid to walk. So the reasonable adjustment requirements will vary according to their needs. So there shouldn't be anything there that is unexpected. In terms of the volume of learning, we see this as approximately 80 hours of structured learning and 20 hours of private study, plus the practical assessment for people who have no experience. You can reduce that volume of learning if you are targeting experienced cohorts. So for example, if you are targeting persons who are people who currently hold registration as a builder, we do not expect that they would need 80 hours of structured learning because they'd be more familiar with being able to read up questions on the standards. You won't have to teach them how to read the standards, but someone who has no skills. So that's a guideline, just as it is a guideline for vet courses, but and how you do that hours of learning. So we see that they will need to do some study for that because they will need to be assessed. Okay, I'm going to pause there, just check to see if there's any questions. And I've got a couple of questions there. Okay, so David, just checking with you. I might just unmute you for a second just to see if that answers all of your questions. If you could unmute yourself. Oh, thanks, David. David just said yes, that answers all of his questions. Okay. The next question. So the next section that we're going to look at, continuing on with RTO obligations, you will need to issue a certificate of completion. Just like you, well, we don't issue certificate completions and vet courses, but this is equivalent. You don't need to issue a statement of attainment or equivalent because it's just the one unit really. So you'll need to put on there your RTO logo, name and ID, the VBA endorsed logo. So to RTOs who are endorsed, we'll issue a logo. This logo has actually since changed. That was an early draft that you can see on screen, but we will supply that to anyone who is endorsed. You'll need to provide the course code and the name. The course code is 10 digits long, so it complies with the VETMIS requirements. If we update the course in any substantial way, we will change that course code and the last digit will reflect the year. If we do minor changes, we'll change it to release, currently it's release 1, we'll change it to release 2, and we'll send that out to all endorsed RTOs, but you won't need to change the certificate or anything in terms of your any of your coding on your assessments and delivery materials. You will need to issue a unique certificate number, so we suggest that you do this out of your student management system where possible. You'll need to provide the completion date, and it must be verifiable by the VBA, the employer, or an industry association such as SPARS Australia or SPARS Victoria. In terms of the VBA, we do not want to have to put that in writing. We should be able to pick up the phone and should be able to provide that to us over the phone. It's providing that we say that we're from the VBA and we'll have authorised people to do that. We will not be, and you will not be charging us for that either. So there's no charge for verification. And by the way, that's just a terrible example of a certificate that I mocked up. I'm sure your certificates look much more beautiful than that. Okay, endorsed RTOs, some high-level obligations. So you'll need to nominate a course program coordinator. That'll be the primary contact for the VBA. So that way we're not driving very busy, annoying, very busy CEOs as we need to. So if the course program coordinator changed, you'll need to let us know when that changed. Only suitably qualified trainers and assessors can train this course. You can, of course, have guest speakers. So please feel free to include guest speakers in that are relevant. You will be required to participate in monitoring activities. So that's a quality assurance component for us, whilst it's a non-accredited course. So the kind of things that we will cover off in monitoring activities, we might ask for a copy of the all the assessments that a particular student did. We might ask for a copy of your current training and assessment strategy and your current training materials, just to make sure that they're currently up to speed. We don't intend that to be burdensome. We don't intend that to be like it is for the VBA. We will be doing due diligence on RTO, so it's our expectation that anyone that we endorse as a quality RTO and that you would be aligning your practices with the RTO standards 2015 anyway. We expect that you'll deliver and assess the course to your specifications, but we are allowing you to customize the course to meet your cohorts that you're targeting. You do not have to target every cohort. You can target one cohort, you can target a different cohort to what we've identified if you identify a different cohort as well, but you must deliver and assess to the course specifications. You must engage in ethical and accurate marketing. So you cannot say that this course results in registration. You can say that this is a prescribed course, but you can't say in any way guarantee or imply that registration is a direct outcome of completing this course, because it's not. They have to apply for registration. We will provide anyone who is approved for endorsement with a set of marketing guidelines. It's fairly standard stuff. It's things like you can't market on a Sunday, you can't cold call after 8 o'clock. You can, so we've got some fairly standard guidelines. I'm not going to go through those guidelines today, but we will provide them before you sign an agreement. You must issue and be able to verify the certificates of completion, as we mentioned before, and you must maintain the records for at least 2 years. And that includes all records, so enrolment and also assessment records. And there should be no outsourcing of enrolment, delivery or assessment activities. So we don't care if you use a third-party marketing company to market stuff, but you can't outsource the enrolment, delivery, or assessment activity. So think of it in the same terms as a Victorian funding contract, the same guidelines there. So I'll pause there just to see if there's any questions that have come up. Okay, nothing's come up just yet. Okay. Can trainers be contractors and it not deemed a third party? Yes, Andrew, they can. So if they are under a contract with you, yes, they're your staff member as far as we're concerned. So you can't hire another RTO or hire a training company. They must be directly contracted to you, but yes, they can be contractors. And that's possibly the case for a lot of trainers these days anyway. Okay. There's no other questions popping up. Okay, the next one. Eligible RTOs. These are very broad criteria. So RTOs who currently deliver the following CPC qualifications: Advanced Diploma of Building Surveying, Certificate for in Building and Construction, or the Diploma of Building and Construction, and that also should have the Certificate for in Building and Construction, swimming pools and spas. So any of those eligible CPC qualifications, we expect that you already have staff that are able to deliver, and you would also have some materials in this space. Other relevant courses: if you are currently authorised to deliver the Queensland course, which is the 10660 NAT course in swimming pool safety inspections, that's obviously a similar course. Again, it doesn't cover all the requirements in Victoria, but if you've got that, any courses relating to child safety and any courses relating to work health and safety site inspections. That doesn't mean that you're not delivering those, you can't apply, but we are looking for RTOs that are already working in this space and have an understanding of this space. So certainly work health and safety is a really big one, but we have had RTOs who are working in the first aid space that we think has some relevancy as well. Okay, before I move into how to become endorsed, I'll just do another call out for any question and answers. Okay. All right, here's the meaty part of the presentation: how to become endorsed. There is effectively 5 steps to the endorsement process. So the first step is you must submit a request to become endorsed. That includes the request form. So I've sent you a copy of that. As part of the request form, if you've looked at that, you'll know that that also asks you to provide information about the student cohorts that you intend to target. It is okay if you only initially intend to target one cohort, but you might target other cohorts later on. We just want to know what you're thinking initially, and providing trainer and assessor profiles. So you do need to have at least one trainer that's suitably qualified. Now, how many trainers and assessors do you have to have? You need to have enough to meet what your intended enrolment is. Now, in terms of this, it's a minimum of 1 to begin with. We understand that some of you might be just starting off small and then later on intending to increase it. So as long as you've got 1, but if you have more, please list them all. We do look at them all, and we also look at a whole of what the trainer and assessor profiles are. You need to provide us with a training assessment strategy document for at least 1 cohort. Now you can include, you can do it through 1 document for your training assessment strategy or your task, so 1 document, or you can do it as a series of smaller documents. Do it however you do for your current RTOs, because that's more likely to be compliant. So we're looking for the same kind of things that you provide when you're putting on a scope request. So we want to know some details around how you're intending to market, what industry consultation that you've you've undertaken or intend to undertake, what resources you'll be using, so physical resources such as classroom venues, what resources the students will be provided, what resources the students might need to purchase themselves. So for example, does a student need to have a tablet or a computer? So all that kind of general stuff that you would put in a TAS. And the TAS is, as the auditors always say, paints a picture of how you're intending to deliver the course. So paint us a picture of how you're intending to deliver the course. If you want to, you can include, if you're intending to target 2 or 3 cohorts, you can, and you would normally do that in the one TAS, you can include it in the one TAS, or you can just provide us with one TAS. We'll be happy either way. In the fact sheet, so in the fact sheet information that we provided you, there's a detailed outline of what we're looking for. So make sure you just check it off against that. We've found that in some submissions that we've already got, that people haven't submitted everything, so they haven't provided us with how they're going to go about doing industry consultation. So just like ASCA, that's a really important thing, and we want to know that. And the other thing is we want to see a full assessment tool. Now, we're not talking about a single assessment. We want the whole suite of assessments plus the marking guides that you are going to use for one cohort. So if you're changing your assessment tools, and you might, depending on your cohort, we just want to see one assessment tool. Really important there, make sure you include your mapping document. Use your templates. We're not providing you with a template of how we want you to map it. We're happy to interpret that. We'll explain about that process a little bit. So you're going to provide us with 3 documents, a minimum of 3 documents: the request form, the training assessment strategy, and the assessment tool. And of course, the assessment tool could be one big, massive document, or it could be a series of smaller documents. If your marking guide is a like for what you deliver, you can just give us that as well. The next thing that will happen is, so we'll get this submission and we'll do a panel review. There are 4 people that are on the panel. And what we look for as the panel, we look for submission completeness. So if you haven't provided us with everything, we send it back to you and request more information. When we know we've got everything, we review the submission and we make a recommendation. The panel then makes a recommendation to the state cladding surveyor, the state surveyor, and the state surveyor has ultimate choice based on the recommendation of the panel. So it's quite a robust process. So David, that might answer some of your questions. So we are looking at your assessment tool. We look at the mapping guide in particular, so make sure you include that. And we are looking at your instructions to the students, the assessor guide, so make sure you complete everything in there. So once you have been approved to be endorsed, we will then send you an agreement form and a copy of the marketing guides. You are not endorsed at this point of view, but you are approved to be endorsed, and your CEO will need to sign that agreement form. Once that agreement form is returned to us signed, you are officially endorsed, and we'll send you a notice of endorsement and endorsed course logo, and we'll send you the details of how long the course is and how long you're endorsed for. So it's a 12-month period, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well. And then we will list you on the VBA website 3 to 5 days later. We do 3 to 5 days just to allow you to get time to get up your website, to notify your staff, get everything. If you need longer, you can tell us. And then once you have your course website page come up, you can send that link through to us as well, and we'll update that. But in the agreement document, here, we'll actually ask you for what trading name. So if you've got multiple trading names, we want to know which trading name that you want us to we're not advertising you, but we're going to list you under, what telephone number, what website address, if you've got more than one website address, so, and contact details, and then we'll add your course page to that as well. So once you're endorsed, so you will be endorsed for 12 months, and we'll send you the endorsed logo. So with your, as I said before, with your endorsement notification, the formal endorsement notification, I will send you the logo, and then you'll be listed as endorsed. RTO on the VBA website, and you can start marketing, delivering the course as soon as you get that official notification. There will be a renewal process in the event that the course isn't accredited by the time that you're ready to renew. So we will get you to sign a new agreement. We have the right to not renew that agreement if we've had concerns, but again, that would be based on monitoring activities. You also have the right to not renew the agreement if you don't want to continue delivering the course as well. I'll just stop there and ask if there's any questions. No, but if there's any questions come up, I'll answer in a second. And we will also provide a trainer and assessor PD session as well. So the VBA will hold some professional development session for trainers and assessors, just to make sure that your staff are online. So that's really the end of our presentation. So I'll stop here again just for any questions before we finish. Okay, it looks like we don't have any. We've finished early, which is probably a good thing. But if you do have any questions, just shoot. Oh, we have one. Thanks, Andrew. So Andrew just said thank you. If you do have any questions, you can shoot it through to the Endorsed RTO mailbox. So any questions relating to that, just shoot through directly to that. I've also provided the TechReg email. So if you've got technical questions about the registration, that needs to go to our technical and regulation team, and they can answer those questions. But really, our aim for this is to get this up and running, get really good quality trained building inspector pool safety persons out there. And we also certainly want, so we really are looking for good quality RTOs, delivering good quality training and assessing appropriately. And then our intention is for this course to become accredited, and then anyone who we have endorsed will then go and seek to add the accredited course onto their scope. Once that happens, we will make the recommendation that any RTO that we've endorsed should be considered for scope approval as well. So we will make that recommendation too. Okay, I'll just do one last shout out for any further questions. No, thank you so much. Hope you all won at the cup yesterday if you're into that sort of thing, and we'll finish there. Thank you very much.